Hello, good morning everybody and welcome to the CRAE information session on food waste. Thank you very much everybody for joining us this morning. My name is Eleanor Relton and I am one of the independent directors of the CRAE compostable scheme, and I am delighted to be chairing this morning's session. So we hope this morning's session provides you with some valuable insight that will help you better plan your company's food waste and food packaging strategy. Over the next hour, you'll not only hear about the current state of commercial food waste in Ireland, we will provide you with important information on the role of food waste in future government and EU policy, and also from a very practical perspective about two new tools that can assist your businesses in managing their food waste and provide assurance to your customers around the green credentials of the compostable products that you sell. So based on registrations, we've had a great turnout this morning. We've got over 150 people registered from a whole wide range of industries and also a number of different countries too. So in addition to the waste sector, we have local authorities, we have packaging suppliers, food producers, supermarkets, fast food chains, hotels and business groups all signed up to come this morning, which is great. In terms of how the morning will run, I'll just provide you with a quick introduction. So we have four great speakers this morning. Firstly, we will hear from Sara Islami from Red Sea on the research conducted late last year on the current state of commercial food waste collection. We will then hear from Philip Nugent, Assistant Secretary at the Department of Climate Action, Communications, Networks and Transport. We're delighted that Philip could join us this morning to provide us with the latest on the role of food waste in waste policy at both an Irish and an EU level. We will then hear from Sinead Niwanin from the Connacht Ulster Regional Waste Office about the new supports in place to assist businesses in separating and recycling their food waste and dry recycling waste. And lastly, but not least, we have Percy Froster from CRAE, who will then speak to introduce you to the CRAE compostable scheme. The CRAE compostable scheme is a locally grown certification scheme to provide easy identification and assurance of products that can be composted via food waste bins in Ireland. We hope that this great lineup of speakers will provide you with both a good balance of strategic and practical information to assist in your business's management of food waste. So before I hand over to our first speaker, just a small point on housekeeping. I won't tell you where the emergency exits or toilets are. Given most of you are probably joining us from home, you shouldn't need to tell you that. But I would like to tell you about the Q&A facility we have for this morning's session. So it's nice and easy to use. Basically what we'll do is we'll save questions till the end. You just need to go to the following website. It's just appeared below me, hopefully for all of you, which is www.2020crae.com. So that's 2020cre.com. Go to that website, type in your question and then press ask question. And then those questions will then come through to me so I can ask them of our speakers this morning. If your question is of a particular speaker, if you can please indicate that in the question so I can direct it to the correct person. The event is being recorded and you can watch it again on our website, compostable.ie. Okay, so without further ado, I will pass you on to our first speaker, Sara Islami, to give us the lowdown on the Red Sea research.
I'm very happy to be kicking off the session this morning by presenting the results of a research project we conducted at Red Sea looking at commercial food waste recycling. To give you a brief background, the main objective of the research was to assess attitudes and behaviours among businesses in relation to waste management. Red Sea was commissioned to carry out the research and it was funded by the organisations that you see on your screen. We invited members of the Restaurant Association of Ireland, the Vintners Federation of Ireland, Small Firms Association and IBEC to take part in the survey, and we managed to reach a sample of 151 businesses. These businesses were predominantly bars, pubs, hotels, restaurants and cafes, and they were spread across the country and also varied in size from those with kind of less than 5 employees all the way to some with more than 50. And in terms of timing, the research was carried out between the 15th and the 30th of August 2019. To start with, I will give you a bit of kind of context in relation to waste bin usage and collection practices among the businesses that we surveyed. Asked them about the type of bins that they have on their premises, and as you can see, nearly all had a general waste bin and a recycling waste bin. 3 and 4 said that they have a food waste bin, and a similar but a slightly lower proportion said that they have a glass recycling bin. We then asked them that of the types of bins that they have, which do they actually use for their waste disposal? And while kind of an overwhelming majority of those with a general waste bin said that they use this type of bin to dispose of their waste, not all of those with a food or a recycling waste bin actually seemed to kind of use this type of a bin. So there seems to be a bit of a gap when it comes to those types of bins and whether or not they're being used. To kind of waste collection, majority of the businesses have their bins collected on a weekly basis. And as we might expect, kind of types of bins like general waste or food waste are collected somewhat more frequently than, say, a glass recycling bin. The businesses that we surveyed, paying per lift or per collection seemed to be the most popular mode of payment for waste collection. And this is kind of irrespective of the type of bin. Focusing specifically on food waste, we wanted to get a better understanding of their attitudes and practices, and we looked at the kind of reasons behind whether or not businesses use food waste bins. Said that they did use this type of bin. The number one reason cited by nearly 2 in 5 was that this is the law, they have to use this type of bin. This is closely followed up by a motivation for kind of being more environmentally friendly. And then after this, there's a bit of a gap, and then they talk about kind of practicalities of using a food waste bin and how it kind of keeps food waste separate from the other bins or leaves other waste kind of cleaner for recycling and so on. Question of those who said that they either don't have or don't use a food waste bin, and the number one reason they gave for not using a food waste bin was that this was not provided to them by their waste collector. And this is despite the fact that legislation requires collectors and businesses to have and to use a food waste bin. Additionally, nearly 1 in 6 said that they don't have space for an extra bin, and we'll see this kind of come up again later on as an obstacle that businesses face. And other reasons included kind of not knowing about food waste bins or issues that they might have with kind of collection frequency or the cost associated with this type of bin. Also presented businesses with a range of statements to kind of gauge their attitudes and behaviors in relation to handling of food waste. And we came across some very positive findings here. Majority of the businesses we surveyed were actively engaged in managing their food waste. 9 in 10 said that they monitor their kitchens to see kind of where food waste is arising. And over 8 in 10 said that they have kind of systems in place or that where they try and kind of reduce their food waste, or that they kind of make sure that their staff are fully trained in handling food waste. However, despite this kind of active engagement and their expressed desire to do more, businesses are also facing some obstacles. So we can see nearly 3 in 5 said that although they would love to do more, they either can't justify the resources required, be it kind of staff, time, or cost, or that they simply don't know kind of where to get started. In addition, as we saw earlier, space also seems to be an issue, with nearly half of businesses saying that kind of having multiple bins is taking up too much space on their premises. Also wanted to get a sense of what types of initiatives might be useful in helping businesses manage their food waste better. Majority of the businesses were quite open to these initiatives. Nearly everyone said that, and a kind of an infographic showing that which type of waste goes into which type of bin would be very helpful for their business. And nearly 9 in 10 said that they were in favor of a downloadable toolkit with kind of tips and suggestions on how to reduce their food waste. Additionally, 77% said that they wanted online videos that they could use for staff training, and 2 in 3 said that customer kind of facing materials that will be very useful for their business so that they can kind of promote their commitment to reducing food waste to their customers. In addition to this survey, we also carried out a consumer opinion poll among a nationally representative sample in Ireland. And one of the findings kind of from that survey, which would be useful for the session this morning, would be that nearly 70% of Irish adults said that they'd be more inclined to buy products in compostable packaging that has been independently certified. So I suppose it's great to see that kind of this appetite exists both on the part of consumers and the businesses to do more in this area. Just to kind of recap on some of the key findings from the survey. The business survey that we carried out, it represented a good kind of spread of different types of establishments and business sizes across various geographical locations around the Republic of Ireland. And what we discovered was that overwhelming majority of the businesses have a general and a recycling waste bin and actually use these types of bins. However, only 3 in 4 have a food waste or a glass recycling bin, and there are gaps in relation to whether or not these types of bins are actually being used. Those businesses who don't have or don't use a food-based bin say that this is not provided to them by their waste collector, or they cite kind of lack of space as a reason for not using this type of bin, while those who do use a food-based bin cite the law and kind of environmental concerns as the main reasons why they use this type of bin. Businesses express an openness to initiatives that can help better manage food waste through toolkits and kind of aids to help them train their staff. And finally, kind of, as we said, there's interest both from the businesses and the consumers in promoting a commitment to reducing food waste and use of compostable packaging. From me on the results of the Red Sea research.
Thank you, Sarah, for that very informative presentation. And I think that summarises it perfectly at the end in terms of businesses do want to do more in this area, but then they are very keen to hear of new resources and about potential certification. So just a quick reminder, if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you can go to the website 2020cre.com, so that's 2020cre.com, and just put in your questions there and send them through for the speakers at the end. So I'm now going to hand over to Philip Nugent, who joins us from the Department of Climate Action, Communications, Networks and Transport.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I'm going to talk about the kind of the context for food waste and the policy drivers for how food waste will be treated in the forthcoming Waste Action Plan. So food waste is a complicated issue, and I just want to talk a little bit about why we waste food, what the scale of the problem is, and why it's a global issue for starters. So our relationship with food is complicated, and the reasons why we waste food can be complex too and multifaceted, whether they're for personal or cultural or economic reasons. And I think how we define and think about food waste can also be complicated. But for me, a particularly useful definition is that food waste is food that is not eaten by people. This is useful because when we put waste after food, I think we start to normalize it, and it becomes something other than food. It becomes just another problematic output from modern life that we need to find a way of dealing with. But when we think of it as food that's not eaten by people, then the emphasis shifts, and we start to ask, well, why is it not eaten by people? And why do some of our production and processing methods produce more than we consume? Why do we buy more than we need? And why do we continue to be fooled by multi-buy promotional offers? And when we think of it as something as food not eaten by people, I think it automatically moves the conversation back along the life cycle or up the waste hierarchy. Food waste is a huge global challenge. In Ireland, we generate 1 million tons of food waste annually, not including wasted food from agriculture. This represents a carbon footprint of 3.6 megatons of CO2. Around 40% of this comes from the food processing operations, and the remainder from households and the commercial sector. Around a third of it from households. And every household in Ireland is responsible for 117 kgs of food waste. And this has a real material cost as well in terms of the financial cost to households, which is between 400 and 1,000 euro per annum. Obviously, it also represents a massive loss of resource value. So this food that is not eaten by people has a value. Its production requires time. It requires the use of scarce resources such as water, land. It has costs associated with processing, shipping, packaging, storage, etc. So it's an extremely inefficient use of those resources when this food that is not eaten by people ends up in a bin. And it's an even less efficient use of resources if this food that is not eaten by people ends up in the wrong bin and its resource potential is not realized. Globally, waste of food has huge implication in terms of demands placed on land, the use of fertilizers, resource requirements all along the production chain and afterwards too, as food and the packaging it comes in need to be segregated, collected and treated. And this puts food waste at the forefront of the climate action discussion. UN estimates that if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest global greenhouse gas emitter behind only China and the US, and that 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is wasted. That obviously then presents an ethical issue when we look at overproduction and food waste in some areas while food poverty persists for others. So in terms of the policy context, you're probably all aware that we've been working for some time now on the development of a new waste strategy, which will be called a Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy. And this work is taking place in a broader sustainability, waste and circular economy policy context. At an international level, Goal 12.3 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals talks about the need by 2030 to have per capita food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food losses along production and supply chains. The EU Circular Economy Package shares this objective, requiring an EU-wide food waste reduction of 30% by 2025 and 50% by 2030, identifying food waste as one of 5 priority areas. And this is reflected now in the revised Waste Framework Directive, which obliges member states to adopt specific food waste prevention programs within their waste prevention programs. Earlier this year, the second Circular Economy Action Plan contained a proposal to introduce a food waste reduction target through the Farm to Fork strategy. This strategy proposes 27 measures to increase the sustainability of food distribution and consumption, including specific waste reduction measures, which are by Q4 2022 to bring forward a proposal for revision of EU rules on date marking of foods. This is the use by best before issue. And then in 2023 to bring forward EU level targets for food waste reduction based on data collected from member states in preceding years. Nationally then, food waste is identified here as a priority waste stream within the National Waste Prevention Programme managed by the EPA. And in recent years, increased resources have been assigned to the area in recognition of its strategic importance. Ireland's outgoing waste management policy or resource opportunity considers food waste from the perspective of disposal only. And that will change in the forthcoming action plan. And the 2019 Climate Action Plan has endorsed both EU and UN ambitions around reducing food waste by 50%, but it didn't propose specific actions, leaving that for elaboration in the Waste Action Plan. So clearly the policy framework is in place at national and international level. There's broad acceptance that preventing food waste is an intrinsic part of the transition to a circular economy, which is itself crucial to meeting the broader climate challenge. The regulatory environment has evolved significantly too, so that the amount of food waste being captured has increased. So under the food waste regulations from 2015, household waste collectors are required to provide or arrange for the provision of a separate collection service for household food waste in designated brown bin areas. The rollout of the brown bin was phased in between July 2013 and July 2016 for population agglomerations over 500 people. Recently, there's been a marked increase in the provision of brown bins following enforcement actions coordinated by the WRLAs. And between 2017 and 2018, more than 53,000 additional brown bins were rolled out. However, clearly challenges still remain. As we know through discussions of our Waste Advisory Group, and we note the findings of the Red Sea survey in terms of the prevalence of brown bin usage and the main reasons for not using a food waste bin, or the obstacles cited by people as to why they do not currently use a brown bin. So we need to do better than having less than half of all adults using a food waste bin. Provision of a bin obviously comes through strongly, as does awareness and education in terms of the obstacles to wider use. People saying effectively that I would be more likely to recycle my food waste if I was given more information or if there was a national media campaign. So I just want to talk through some of the challenges that will be addressed through the actions in the Waste Action Plan without specifying the actions themselves, obviously, because the action plan hasn't been published yet, but it will be soon. So data is obviously a critical issue in terms of achieving the goal of having food waste. So we need to have a clear idea of what our starting point is if the destination is to be clear. So data will be a fundamental building block, and the provision of the accumulation of the required data to inform how we get to the 30% and the 50% targets. We will have actions around prevention as well, in terms of education and awareness, in terms of labeling and clear information to consumers. And we have commitments in terms of how we work around and with the Food Safety Authority of Ireland in terms of best before and use by. We also will have actions to reduce food waste along the whole food chain. So it's not just at the point of use. So a key emphasis throughout the Waste Action Plan will be on shifting back along the product life cycle to ensure that we are not just dealing with the point of use, and we're not just thinking of how we deal with the waste that we produce, but how do we reduce the actual waste in the first place. We will have actions around redistribution and how we can feed people who don't have access to sufficient food. So how do we support food donation through a mix of incentives and restrictions on destruction of edible food? How do we secure buy-in from retailers and the food processing industry to back us on that? And then collection is obviously a critical issue. So the key challenge is we need to have more households using brown bins. And we need more brown bins being collected. So we need to ensure that we have all players in the system actually build into the need to deliver on our EU targets. So we will have measures that will bring us towards better segregation levels and reduce contamination, and also measures around commercial waste in apartments. And to date, this has been a relatively untapped potential for us. And then I think we also need to look at how we harness other regulatory codes to support waste objectives. So not just burdening the waste management system and the waste regulation system, but how do we actually invoke the planning code or tenancy legislation or building standards to ensure that we're also meeting the broader waste and circular economy challenge. So that's just a quick flavour of some of the actions or some of the challenges that the actions will address in the Waste Action Plan. Publication is imminent. It will be, you will see it this month, and implementation will start immediately. In fact, some actions are already underway. We have been supported in developing the Waste Action Plan by a cross-sectoral waste advisory group, which Percy and Elena have been part of. And that group will continue to exist, and it will be part of the implementation arrangements. And I think it's important to note that not just in terms of the food waste elements, but across the entire Waste Action Plan, and there are more than 200 actions, but full delivery will require every sector of society and every home and business to be better educated and to be part of the transition to a circular economy. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip, for that very informative presentation. So as you can see from that, the food waste is very much front and centre in the Waste Action Plan, both in terms of food waste prevention and also handling food waste when it does occur. We just had a message come through to say if you are having problems hearing with the sound, if you go down to the bottom of the screen, there is a wheel symbol, and if you click that and change the speed from auto to lower internet speed, that should help with your sound quality. So yeah, that's just hopefully that should be helpful if you are having sound quality problems. So thank you very much, Philip. We will now move on to our next presentation from Sinead Niwanin from the Connacht Ulster Regional Waste Office.
Thank you, Eleanor, and good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be with you this morning, and I'm equally delighted to be in a position to present to you a new piece of work that we're currently working on in the Waste Management Planning Offices, the development of a commercial waste awareness toolkit, a toolkit which we intend to launch later on in September. So what I'd like to do is just give you a brief overview over the next 5 minutes or so on how this campaign evolved, a little bit of information on the consultation phase that we've undertaken as part of the campaign, and then I'd also like to share with you some of the draft materials that we're currently working on. So just by way of introduction, really this campaign has evolved from primarily the findings of the non-household waste characterization study undertaken by the EPA, which highlighted to us that 70% of the materials found in the general waste stream from the commercial sector are suitable for either composting or recycling. And in addition to that, high levels of contamination are found in both the recycling and food waste streams. We aim to develop a toolkit that will support SMEs not only in improving waste segregation practices, but will also increase composting and recycling rates, reduce contamination rates, and engage staff. And in addition to that, the suite of materials will be relevant to all sectors, to retail, hospitality, or office-based businesses. The materials will be accurate and concise, and also the materials will need to fulfill the needs of the end user. So with that in mind, we've undertaken consultation and stakeholder engagement with both business representative bodies and the Irish Waste Management Association. And with regard to the business representative bodies, some of the associations we've been involved with include Retail Ireland, RG Data, the Restaurants Association of Ireland, the Vintners Federation, Circle K, Apple Green, Maxall, and McDonald's, to name but a few. There are others as well, in addition to the engagement that we've had with the Irish Waste Management Association. Following the consultation process, we collectively agreed that all the materials and assets developed as part of this toolkit needed to contain simple messaging, be clear, concise and consistent, and be easy and quick to understand, be memorable, and also that the materials would elicit and prompt behavioural change. Based on that, we've developed a suite of assets based on signage for posters and bin labels, an information booklet, infographics and checklists, 4 short animations, a web page, and also some advertising materials. So as you can appreciate, the materials are currently in draft format and will most likely take on some additional changes before we sign off and launch the materials at the end of the month. So therefore, I'm not at liberty to share the entire deck or draft of materials with you. However, I would like to take the opportunity to give you a flavour of some of the materials and what they might look like and how they would look in situ. So just to look at the first series of posters and bin labels that we're considering. As you can see here, we've continued with the traditional colour scheme of green for recycle, brown for food waste, and a dark grey for general waste. And you can see how these posters might look in situ, both internally and externally. So in addition to the posters that I've shown you there, we've also created a wide range of labels that will be available in due course. In addition, we have produced a booklet outlining how to manage waste in your business, a step-by-step guide. We've also produced 4 short animations based around why you need to segregate your waste, how to recycle, how to segregate food waste, and also how to address other waste streams that arise in business. In addition to that, as I've outlined earlier, we're also producing a specific dedicated business page that will be hosted on mywaste.ie, and that page will contain all of the assets and creatives that relate to the Commercial Waste Toolkit. It will include the videos and animations, all the downloads, and there will also be a feature on the site whereby SMEs can order pre-printed materials that appear on the site. So in addition to the distribution of materials through mywaste.ie, materials will be made available to business representative bodies for circulation to their members. Materials will be made available to the waste industry and to local authorities, and of course to any other interested bodies also. So to conclude, we're finalising the materials as I've outlined, and the materials will be available later on in September. We're ensuring that all the materials are adaptable and also that the materials are responsive to the needs of the end users, namely that they're clear, concise and easily accessible. So with that in mind, we hope that the materials, when used by the SME sector, will allow the sector to further embrace the principles of the circular economy and make their workplaces more sustainable going forward. So before I conclude, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you, Percy, for giving us the opportunity to present here this morning. We're very grateful. And I'd also like to invite all of you, the attendees, to contact us if you'd like any further information on any aspect of the materials presented, or indeed if you'd like to be added to the circulation list for our launch packs, which we'll be launching, as I said, later on in the month. My contact details are listed here on the slide, in addition to those of my colleagues, and we'll be delighted to hear from you. So thank you again for your time this morning, and have a great day.
Thank you, Sinead. That looks like it's going to be a very comprehensive set of information to assist businesses in this area. Just a quick reminder that we will be showing this, it will be streamed on our website after the event. So if you need any of those email addresses to contact particular speakers, you can get them from the website. And also just another quick reminder on the questions. If you want to send it in, it is 2020cre.com. So that's 2020cre.com. For any questions for the end of the session. Okay, so I'm now going to hand over to our final speaker, who is Percy Foster from CRE.
Thanks, Elena, for the introduction. The presentation I'm going to give this morning is very short and it's going to talk about the new opportunities with certified composite materials in Ireland used in food waste recycling. So over the last 2 years in Ireland, composite products have been growing both here, also around Europe and the world. But there has been a lot of confusion around the various type of terms that are used, be it oxidogradable, biodegradable, compostable. There are various certificates that are being provided to collectors and people don't know how to interpret if they're genuine certificates. So there's been a bit of confusion kind of happening. So what with that confusion, there are going to be some risks. There might be risks that some of the compostable materials aren't compatible in Irish composting plants. And with, I suppose, compostable materials, they're very similar in shape and look to conventional plastic. So people can be confused, both the consumer and the businesses, and that might result in more conventional plastics being put in food waste bins and causing contamination, which we don't want. So we looked at this issue, we talked to our members, packaging companies, and we came up with a solution that we thought will and has improved the situation in Ireland. That solution was to develop a local CRE certification scheme to ensure that compostable materials are compatible in Irish composting plants. Products which are tested in a plant, if they break down and compost down, they get awarded a logo if they pass. That logo can be displayed on products, and that makes it easy to identify the genuine compostable products and what people can do with them. They can put them into the food waste bin and that they're industrial composting. And with that in mind, we designed our logo very simple, trying to educate the public that the materials are compostable, they can go into your food waste bin, and then our name underneath that to make it look like a genuine logo. So that's kind of our kind of solution in Ireland around the issue. So from a business perspective, listening are hotels or restaurants or people who are generating food waste and who are buying compostable products. So having that logo on those compostable products give you confidence that the material bought are genuine and that they're accepted in food waste bins. It makes it easy to identify the products. And I suppose as well, it gives that local independent Irish certification that the products are compostable. It gives you an opportunity where you can promote your green credential to your customers as well, and also help improve recycling of food waste, particularly in the use of compostable liners in food bins. And that's growing a lot with the general public, but also in businesses by using food waste bags that are compostable. This is just a small selection of the types of products that we've certified so far. So as you can see, there's bread wrapping, food pouches, coffee cups and lids, food waste bags, films, trays for holding fruit, and a full list of those are on our website, compostable.ie, under the product section. So you can see that there is a wide range of type of products that have passed our certification. So finally, I suppose, what are kind of the next steps for people like yourself? Well, you have to ask your question. When you buy products, is it compostable? Look for a logo on that product that will identify that is compostable. If your hotels or restaurants or businesses out there buying compostable products, you should ask your supplier, are they certified with us? If they're not, you can also encourage them to get certified with us. I know there are a number of packaging companies listening in this morning, and if you would like to get certified, please send us an email. We'll send you an information pack, and then we'll arrange a phone call with you to explain how the scheme works. So finally, I very much like to thank you for listening in today, and hopefully you will support our people who've been certified and buy compostable products with our logo displayed on it. In addition, there are a number of resources for preventing food waste on stopfoodwaste.ie. It's an EPA initiative, and they have some really good publications there as well for businesses explaining how to prevent food waste. I just thought I might just mention that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Percy, for that great summary about the Cray compostable scheme. So as you can see from the 4 speakers we've had this morning, we've kind of had the on-the-ground perspective in terms of the challenges that businesses are facing. We've had the policy perspective from Philip in terms of the drivers that are going to be affecting businesses, and then we've had 2 sets of solutions presented. So we're now going to move on to questions. We have our first question in, which is a question for Philip. Once again, if you want to ask a question, I think it just appeared there at the bottom of the screen. It's 2020cray.com. So the question is around the Waste Action Plan, and it actually has 2 parts to the question. Firstly, are the likes of orange peels or food items generally not considered edible included in the definition of food waste and included in food waste data? And the second question is also, could you give a bit more information around plans for best before and use by? Are you planning on increasing consumer awareness on what these mean?
So the answer to both is yes. So those materials are considered as part of the food waste capture, as part of the data. And yes, the use by best before issue is one where we really need to provide much better information and awareness to people. So what we will see as part of the rollout of the Waste Action Plan will be an ambitious and kind of coherent, unified messaging across all of the players in the waste kind of system around education and awareness, because I think it's been quite a while since we've had a kind of a high-profile national campaign. The Race Against Waste was probably the last one. So yeah, awareness raising generally will be a big feature of rollout, and on that specific issue, it's critically around better education for people so that they understand what is the difference between use by and best before, and what are the safety considerations in respect of both.
Thank you. And is that part of, are you imagining a public awareness campaign? Is that just in relation to food waste, or is that going to be wider on wider waste issues too?
It'll be on wider waste issues, and then also, I mean, the kind of the critical message overall, the kind of the overarching message in the plan is around the need to think about waste not just as managing the waste that we produce, but how do we move back along the product life cycle and ensure that we reduce what is produced, and that we're much more conscious about how we can prevent waste, how we can reuse and recycle. So that's the kind of the key overarching message, and the awareness raising will be around that, but it'll be around different components of the action plan as well. So there'll be a general theme, but then there'll be discrete kind of messages around other areas, including food waste.
Thank you. And a question for Sarah: where can we get a copy of the Red Sea survey?
I believe that will be shared on the compostable website after this. Percy can correct me to the exact address of the website, but it will be made available to you through their website.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this is a question for Percy, is around compostability tests. Did you test the compostability of natural materials, i.e. an orange peel? If not, can you do so, please?
No, we would have just tested products that have the EN certification, EN 13432. So that be it cups or bags. No, it wouldn't have been actually oranges, because it's assumed, oranges will break down.
Okay. And we have another question come through for Philip. To encourage the donation of surplus food, will you work in government policy to address liability concerns and adopt something similar to the Good Samaritan Act in the US?
A statement or a question?
I think it's a question whether government policy includes addressing liability concerns.
Yes, so we will have specific action around Good Samaritan Acts.
Fantastic. I got another question for Percy. Is the CRAE compostable scheme certification only for Ireland or across the EU too?
No, the scheme is just for Ireland. It's a local certification scheme here in Ireland. It's not for across the EU.
Okay, fantastic. And how long does it take to get certified?
About 3 or 4 months. It depends how well, first of all, people prepare the application. Sometimes for the first applications, there might be to and fro a bit. And if that time is reduced, overall, you're talking about roughly a 3 to 4 month period.
Fantastic. And another question for Philip. Will all households be given compostable liners and kitchen caddies as part of methods to address food waste?
You people are terrible. You're trying to get me to give away all the secrets in the waste action plan. You won't have long to wait. But I would say that, as I was saying in the presentation, one of the key challenges is to increase the number of households who have access to a service or to access to some means of composting. So I don't really want to say much beyond that, but that there are a number of actions around maximising the rate of uptake of brown bin services and compostable options for people.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a date when the new waste policy will be published, or?
It'll be in September.
Yep, fantastic, and it'll be on the department's website. It'll be on the department's website.
It'll be all over, the usual social media channels as well. And and as I was saying earlier on, we have had the assistance of a really committed and diverse waste advisory group, and we would be expecting that all of the members of the waste advisory group would be pushing out the waste action plan as well, given the role that they've had in shaping it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And another question come through for Percy. Is there a difference between industrial composting versus domestic product certification?
So just to make it clear, is our scheme is just for industrial composting. There's European standard EN 13432. There isn't a European standard for home composting, and our scheme is not for products which are home compostable. It's purely just for industrial compostable products. But I believe there is one certification scheme that do have their own home compostable certification scheme standard, but there isn't a European-wide agreed standard for home compostability. But I do believe there is moves to try and start that process to develop one.
And is the certification logo trademarked in Ireland?
The trademark at the moment, the logo is in a process to get trademarked. It's not a typical trademark that it's going to get. It's a certification trademark, so it takes a little bit longer, and it has to be approved by the Minister for Enterprise, Leo Varadkar. So that process is nearing an end. So we hope to have the process completed in the autumn time. So in the next few months, the logo will be fully trademarked.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're at the end of the questions. If anyone else has any other final questions, if you can put them in through on the system, and then we can ask our speakers. It's 2020cray.com, so that's 2020cre.com. As I mentioned before, the presentation will be up on the compostable.ie website, so there is contact details on all the presentations. If you want to ask, obviously, questions of the speakers afterwards, or, for example, if you wanted to sign up to get more information on the supports for business that Sinead was talking about, or the Cray compostable scheme as well that Percy was presenting on. And we have one more come through, so it's a question for Percy. I'm wondering how the Irish compostable packaging certification relates to the EU, considering to implement a 80-cent per kilo levy on packaging. Will it apply to compostable packaging as well? Will Cray push back to the EU?
Yeah, there is moves where in January next year to have a levy of 80 cents per kilogram on recyclable plastic products across the EU. I don't know much more detail than that than I've read, so I really can't say any more, but all I'm aware of that the initiative is looking at 80 cents per kilogram on plastics that are unrecyclable. Maybe Philip might know a little bit more than me about it. That's all I know about it.
Philip, are you able to step in on this one?
No, not offhand. That's as much as I have at this point. But if anybody wants to follow up directly, then they can do so, and I'll provide more information.
Right. Okay, so I think that's it, unless anyone has any final questions. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and thank you very much to all our speakers, Sarah, Philip, Sinead, and Percy. We hope it did provide you with a good blend of sort of the practical and the policy to help guide your future actions in this area. And yeah, thank you. Oh, got one more, sorry, coming again. Back one more. So this is a question for Sinead. And it was wondering about the communications to customers around all rigid plastics. The communications to customers that all rigid plastics can be recycled or put in the recycling bin. As far as I know, not all rigid plastics are recyclable in Ireland right now. Is that true? And what is being done with these plastics?
Well, no, all rigid plastics go into the recycling bin, and that's clearly outlined in the communication materials that has been prepared previously for the household sector, in addition to this new suite of materials which has now been prepared for the commercial sector. And I suppose all the materials, as I outlined and during the presentation, have been produced in consultation with both the business sector and, in this case, most importantly, with the waste sector. So the waste sector are involved and are feeding into the different pieces of iconography and imagery that has been included to communicate the messaging around rigid plastics.
Eleanor, could I just answer there was another part of that question just about what is happening with our waste,
Yes.
or where does it go? So 83% plastic packaging from Ireland is recycled in Europe, predominantly in the UK and Germany, as well as Poland. 15% is recycled in Ireland, and the balance, the remaining 2%, is recycled outside of Ireland.
Thank you. Good statistics there. I have one more question, another one. This is for both Philip and Percy. How will you tackle confusing labelling on compostability, degradability and biodegradability? I think this is around the use of the terms and what they mean.
Will I answer that?
Yes.
Yeah. So I suppose the scheme that we're doing is a voluntary scheme. We're trying to get everybody to get their products certified to our scheme, and everybody standardised using the term compostable. In that way, we remove the confusion around the various different other terms that are being used. So that's kind of what the initiative that we're trying to do, to get everybody in the food chain, from the suppliers, to users, to collectors, to processors, to everybody, to be looking for the Cray compostable logo, and that ensures that we get products that are genuinely compostable onto the market. There are a number of products on the market that are not compostable, that aren't genuine, but unfortunately there's a bit of greenwashing going on, and people are unfortunately paying for a product that they think is compostable, but it's not. So hopefully in time with our scheme, when it gets more recognized by everybody, that everybody looking for our logo. A separate thing, I suppose, that we will be lobbying Philip about is that there is, in law in Belgium, they have mandated where you're only allowed to use the term compostable in relation to products. So it bans the use of other terminology as well. But that's, I suppose, a discussion later on for us with Philip down the line.
Did you have anything to add to that, Philip?
No, just I look forward to engaging as always with Cray and with Percy and the team.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to call it a morning at that. Thank you very much for your questions, and thank you very much for listening in. And we hope this morning's session has been useful to you.